My name is Amy Caherl. I run Detroit Soup, which is a monthly micro-granting dinner funding creative projects in Detroit. And so what happens is, just like Mike said, that you come in with your $5. And I always say it's taking a risk. Because you're coming to Southwest Detroit, where many people don't really come very often. You're walking up these stairs that sometimes, like, where is this place? Because it's above the Mexican Town Bakery. It's a converted storage space, really, that's now turned into a venue. And you pay your $5 and you get soup, salad, bread, and a vote. And your vote goes, usually we have at least 4 projects that wish to help make Detroit better. We've seen hit 4 different categories, so social entrepreneurs, technology, urban gardening, and art. And it was started by Kate Doctoral and Jessica Hernandez. Kate is a recent graduate of Cranbrook, where Jessica is a local musician, Jessica Hernandez and the Deltas, which has signed a Blue Note, which is really exciting. And she and I and a group of people started this 2 years ago just to see if we could. I think that's what it was. It was a bunch of, we like to call like a bunch of hooligans, really, who like art, who love the city, who was finding that there was talk about, like, well, if there's so much potential and possibility in the city, where some people would say that's blight, a lot of our friends were saying, well, then let's do something about it. And I think this was a really practical and easy way to solve small-scale projects, like to fund small-scale projects. We give anywhere between $700 and, give or take the month, $800. It started, the first grant was $110, and it was for a photo project of a gentleman friend of ours who was wanting to take pictures of Rust Belt buildings. And so he was gonna just like, oh, this is the gas that I need to get from point A to point B so I can make a book of Rust Belt cities architecture. And so it kind of started from there, and it slowly started to build and slowly started to build. And only in Detroit, when a project is only 6 months old, you get in the New York Times, and all of a sudden, like, people will go, oh, this is really happening in the city, and this is really ingenious. And it's very humbling to be a part of this project. We've funded multitude of 16 projects up to this point at $8,630. And I was having a conversation even just last night. They were like, well, what, I mean, I don't feel like I do much. I come and I just bring my $5. But it's more than that, because you're sitting around, I wish I had slides and photos, but you sit on the floor, and then we have doors that sits on crates, and all of our silverware and plates and whatnot have been donated to us. And sometimes because we've run out and because we've grown so quickly and so fast, you know, there's paper plates as well. And there's some high top tables, low top tables, and a lot of people from all different parts of the city, maybe all over parts of the world, we found, who are coming and who are interested in saying, I can't do much, but this is what I can do. And I think $5 is great because it's a really accessible amount of money for those who are neighbors in the Southwest community. There's not much you can do anywhere for $5. And what you get a chance to do is you get to hear about 4 different creative projects in the city, find out ways that they're wanting to make it better. You get a chance to eat your food and discuss, like, what project do you think should win with your newfound neighbors. And we have a voting booth, and we don't have to sign in or sign out when you vote. You don't have to show your license. Like, there's no pebble, there's nothing. It's all based on trust. Because I think we live in a community or a culture that doesn't trust its voters. And so for us, it was really important that people felt like they could trust one another in a city where the stereotype is, I mean, you guys could probably had one that jumped in your head automatically of distrust or disloyalty or murder or blight or death, you know, things that are very highly negative. And I think for us, it was a really important way to share trust with your neighbor. And I've met so many people through Soup. I've seen a couple get married. I've seen projects get funded We had one project in particular, her name is Veronica Scott, and she does this thing called the Empowerment Plan. And she takes coats that turn into sleeping bags for the homeless. And she came to Soup kind of downtrodden because she's a student at CCS, and there was people who were like, you know, are you really going to get funding for this? Like, is this really important? Is this really necessary? And she came to Soup, she brought her idea to the table, you know, 150 people in a room saying, wow, this is a really great idea. Like, how can we support you on that? Is really super encouraging. And turned around, I think within 2 months, she was on the National Public Radio, she was on CNN, and Carhartt gave her a lot of materials. She's now been able to, she has a studio in Corktown, she works in cast services, and she's been able to employ and empower 3 women at cast services. So I think what we've seen is that when you get to sit around a room with people that you may or may not know and take a risk of sharing your idea, I've never seen anyone turn around and steal the idea. I've never seen anyone co-opt an idea. I think if anything I've seen is people say, well, I have this and you need it, let me give it to you, or let me use it, or let our skills work with our other skills. We had a theater troupe who said, I want to take an abandoned space and have our play performance in this space. And they didn't have a building, they didn't know where they're gonna go. $800 can do a little bit of like renting and renovation, but not to the extent I believe that they had wanted it. And a gentleman who was in the room said, well, I just bought this space with my brother. It was an old film studio space, so it's like, I think it's just huge. It's 60 by 60 feet. I don't know, it's ginormous. And they were able to do all of their play in there for absolutely free. Another guy who was there was like, I'm a metalsmith and I know how to, I want to create props for your play. I mean, that's priceless. I think another girl who was also there was like, well, I'm an actress, and she ended up like, now I don't see them without her ever. So I just think that like the chance of coming and taking a risk and having a safe environment to ask questions, to engage new projects, and to engage new ideas is really empowering and ultimately powerful, and it all really is for $5. And if you want to donate more, you can. A lot of our expenses, we have a small bar. We take the expenses for the night, which is usually between $75 and $125, depending on what it is, and we take that out of that, and everything else goes back to the project that ultimately is voted on and wins. So every month we start out with $0. So that's kind of the gist of the project. I mean, to me, I think the funding is really exciting, but to me, what's even more exciting is the community engagement part and the resource sharing, the networking, the non-threatening space, the ability to question, the ability to, projects are like, I don't care if I win or not. This is an invaluable opportunity to bring my project to the table, have questions be asked about it from people who don't have the same background, don't have the same ideas, might be in the neighborhood that I just may have moved into and kind of know, and then there's somebody who's like, well, I've lived in this neighborhood for 20 years and this has already failed. So that's kind of the main ideas behind Soup. We're gonna start a community garden in the spring so that we can plant all of our own food and grow it. Usually we have different members in the community always make the soup and the salad, and our friend Tom, who is our lovely, lovely doorman, he makes pie every month out of the goodness of his heart. So that's kind of the gist of Soup, but usually questions are probably easier for me to answer than, yeah. Southeastern Michigan? Yeah. Like, has other people started a soup in their like neighborhood or community? Yeah, there's a website called sundaysoup.org. There's, from what I just read, there's 74 different soups throughout the world. A friend of mine just moved to South Korea and is starting one there. I got emails from Ireland and England, California, which some days feels like a million kajillion miles away. Australia has a soup. So people just, and people like Brooklyn has one. It's called Brooklyn Feast. Theirs is $10. You have to get a reservation before you go. They can only limit to about 70 people in their space, and all the money that's raised goes to art projects. Philly does theirs a little bit differently, and they move locations every single month and kind of explore the city in different ways. So does that help answer your question? Cool. Yeah.
Have you had any of the local corporations give you donations, either of money or materials?
Quicken Loans told me he was going to give me money, but I've yet to see that check. So we'll see. I think I've talked to some businessmen who are like, oh, I'm going to connect you to these donations or to more money. But I think what really is amazing is that $800, for instance, I think $25,000, oftentimes 20 of that will go for your salary, and 5,000 of that might go to your project, but a lot of it will go to administrative costs, paper, copying, things of that nature. But with $800, you can really work through your idea. And I think like we had a guy, like a year and a half ago, he wanted to start doing nutrition education in liquor stores in Detroit. And he had this grand idea, and I think there was a lot of skeptical people like, I don't think this is gonna work. We always have our presenters come back 2 months later and share what they've done with the money, so that's the accountability part. And he was like, this idea didn't work. Well, that's exciting. It's exciting to be able to say, well, okay, this idea didn't work, but why didn't it work? And now he has, it used to be called the Get Fresh Cart. He now has a corner cafe and is supplying fresh and healthy foods through like processing and getting like that kind of little start, like the little push. And it's really like problem solving of how to do fresh foods in liquor stores around the city. So, yeah. So I think like if we could give away $10,000, that's different. I think oftentimes it's like, what could you do that doesn't have to involve you particularly getting paid for that idea to get off the ground? I think that's something to think about. But I will say that after 2 years of doing this project, I did just apply for a grant from the Knight Foundation, because if you really want to reach out to the Detroit community, you got to get into neighborhoods that, right now it works in Southwest really well, but that's because we've been doing it there for so long. And a lot of times the residents of Southwest aren't coming because we use social networking, because we have no budget. We have no way to really get out of social networking. But when you think about the fact that Detroit is, 22% unemployed, probably social media is not the thing that you are spending your most money on or as fine as a necessity. So we need to find new ways of getting into like the heart of different neighborhoods and communities as well. So hopefully with when someone can get paid full-time, like these projects and the integrity of these projects can still stay at the beginning of like kind of what they were doing. So we've done park cleanups a lot of times. That we've done 3 of those. A group in Highland Park built, I believe he was a Lawrence Tech graduate who was an architect who designed this playscape, and it was called Bridge to the Garbage King. And they noticed that there was a neighborhood, or there was a abandoned piece of land that was across the street from where they were living. It was a group of like young 20s, and they decided they were going to build this playscape from the discarded materials. And then, so there's like a big dragon made out of the tires that come out of it, and it's like a huge tree house. And then they wrote a children's book to really enforce the ideas of reusing the materials that's there. That's probably my favorite project that we funded, because I think that's really like, it's real. It's in Highland Park, which is, oh man, it's getting tougher and tougher. And it's like such a gift back to the community. It wasn't about them, and really what they bought was nuts and bolts and screws and brackets. So, because everything else was donated to them. Yeah.
You said 2 years ago, was that 2010 when you started?
Yeah, February 2010. Super Bowl Sunday, the New Orleans Saints are playing that day. It's DetroitSoup.com. We're going to be celebrating our 2-year anniversary, actually at that space I was talking about where that play happened. It's called, or the address is 2900 East Grand Boulevard, and it looks like an abandoned space when you walk in. It's like this very magical space of just brick walls and huge catwalks. And we're going to have the Detroit Fly House, like their circus performers, and they're really integral to how Detroit Soup has been formed. A lot of them come every month. Actually, our friend Tom had always dreamed about being a part of this, and he just was working the door every month and ended up being a part, and now he's able to do his dreams full time because of soup. Like that's so exciting Like that to me is really just like mind blowing about the connections that are being made and in the city. So yeah.
Amy, you said you meet in a Mexican bakery. Is that or above?
It's above the bakery. We've lovingly called it the bakery loft. It used to just be like a practice space and a storage area for Armando's and Mexican Town Bakery. And within the first 3 months of like soup just really kind of taking off, he was able to say, okay, like you could slowly see the progress. The floors got stripped, repainted, a stage was built, and now and like there's lighting and shows happen there on a fairly regular basis. We have the voting booth. We have a bar set up in there now, so it's like a really activated space that used to be, I guess, like 20 years ago. There was a lot of shady things that were going on, and they were like different apartments. They ripped the apartments down, and then I've been able to use it.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Yeah.
How often do you guys get together? Like once a week?
Second Sunday of the month. Yep. And we did it monthly for the first year, and like any good project that's volunteer run, and you get burned out. And so we took a few months off, and we were doing it every other month. But there was a part of me that thought like, oh, okay, we've done this for 2 years now. Like, is the community ready for something new? And the thing is every time I think that, I'd get double of the project proposals than I would the month before, and you're like, and more people are coming. So we're about to outgrow the bakery loft. I have a feeling within the next 6 months. So a gentleman from New York just moved in to the Corktown area and bought an old foundry building and wants to build a army of creatives, is what he told me. And so we're going to be able to use the space for free. It's really exciting. Like, nowhere else. I lived in Los Angeles for 3 years. I lived in Cleveland for a hot second. I grew up in Sterling Heights. And I honestly, when I moved back to Michigan 3 years ago, I thought, okay, well, I'll go to New York, I'll go back to LA, or I'll go to Chicago. Because, you know, there's something going on there. There's no jobs here. There weren't jobs in LA. And I realized, like, as I was slowly just trying to figure out what the next step was for my life, I realized, like, the power and potential that the city really holds for you, and that if you are creative enough to, like, take a risk, that people will back you in ways that I can't go anywhere in the city without running into somebody that I know or have a conversation with. Being a woman and being an artist sometimes and living in Detroit, like my father was like, you're not moving down there. And I was like, okay, well, I'm doing it anyways. And just to see who I've met, who I know, who I engage with, it's life-changing. I will be a Detroit resident the rest of my life. Because you have it. I mean, I always liked music, and a couple years ago, a friend of mine had DJ decks, and I learned, and now I play parties every weekend, you know, like only in this city. Anytime like you come up with an art idea, you're like, oh, can I just use your space? Like, what other city can you just be like, knock, 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 can we use your building for a party? Okay, sure, why not? Cool. Because when I was in LA, we used to want to throw parties all the time or like do shows. And like the cost of that, like to even start, was like $5,000 to like rent out a space. It's insane. I don't want to throw a wedding. That's not interesting to me. But what I want to do is like have ways for people to connect and get together. And that's, you know, the point of gatherings and whatnot. Anyone else have any? Yeah.
When you first started this 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was probably a really small organization.
Mm-hmm.
So did you ever have like frustrating times where you asked yourself like what you were doing and if you wanted to like stop doing it?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, because it was my friend Kate's project. This is her art baby. Like, this is her project. And we actually talked last night. And, like, when it's all volunteer run, and I got the project this time last year, and all of a sudden you start getting email after email after email. And I have to up until this month, like, I had to have a full-time job. So now I'm working 40 to 50 hours a week, driving from Detroit up to Macomb County. And like now I'm like really excited to work on this project, but like you can't give it all because you have to get money to like pay your bills and do the things that you need to do. I mean, so much of soup comes out of my pocket. It's frustrating when people say, yeah, I'll be there, not a problem, and then never show up. It can be overwhelming to lift tables and chairs and plan a huge event for dinner for 150 people. Like it can be very overwhelming. But every month when all of a sudden you see the treasure box full of cash and like somebody's like, oh my gosh, my dream's just like the next step that I wanted to take in my life is now being is happening. Like totally outshines and outweighs anything of those frustrations, because that's life. Like nothing's perfect, even a project that you love so much. But now I get, like next week I get to go to Redding, California to go speak at the TEDx Redding conference, and like, this is a volunteer project, but you're gonna pay my way? Cool. Like I get to go to South by Southwest because someone heard about Detroit Soup and wants to talk about creative philanthropy. Like the opportunities outweigh like the crap stuff. But you have to work hard at whatever you want. Like that, like you gotta fight for it and you gotta believe it, and you have to like prove to other people that it's worth it. We didn't ask any permission from the city to do what we do. We just do it. And that's unique in its own sense, where I think if we would have lived in Chicago, and I think the people who did start the idea in Chicago, like I think after a while, like we serve food. The fact that, you know what I'm saying? Like but I think because it's a community-based project and so much good is coming out of it, we just kind of did it. I'll stop when they tell me to.
See, that was one of my thoughts when you were talking about all the food. I'm like, do they get food permits? Are they a licensed restaurant? I just started thinking about all the
Right.
end of it and the aspect of it. Now, you say you have a bar.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that. Not a drink. Good, because I was thinking, I'm like, can I bring my kids? Oh my gosh.
I mean, you can bring your kids. I guess it's just more of, I guess I'm letting my secrets go here. I don't know. I guess it's just kind of like we had Coleman Young Jr. come to our dinner and not say a thing. I don't know. I think I don't know if every project could get away with doing that kind of stuff, but I guess like Renegades and I don't know. We took a risk and it's paid off. I mean, when parks are cleaned up and projects are moving forward and doing things that the city couldn't do with $700 that the city couldn't do with $7,000, I mean, I don't know, bring it at this point. Like, I'll pay a fine.
The city is usually pretty good at letting people do what they do as long as it's an improvement to the city.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really is. And I guess if anything, we've had more and more children come because I think it's really exciting for kids to see how democracy works within a small group.
What, you said second Sundays of the month.
Mm-hmm.
What time?
6:30 is when the doors open. 7:30's proposals start. We usually eat around 8:15. Voting closes around 9:15. And a lot of people are out of there by 9:30, 10 o'clock.
You're doing one in February, though?
Yep, February 12th.
If you send me all the details,
Yeah.
everything in an email,
Yep.
everybody who signed in and put their emails on here, I'll make sure I send out a reminder to so that you have the information in case you lose it.
And if you have a project you wish to propose, those are always due the Sunday before the dinner. So February 5th will be the project proposal deadline. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
So these other soups that you've talked about, are they like registered nonprofits or no?
I don't think any of them are registered nonprofits. And even as I was debating about how to get funding so that Detroit Soup could really just be a top-notch organization within the city, I realized that I didn't want to become a nonprofit. I don't want to jump through all those hoops. But I did find a nonprofit in Detroit called Cityscape Detroit, and they're the oldest nonprofit in the city. And because of that, they have, you can kind of make it do whatever you want it to do. And so they're like, we'll support your project, and you can kind of come under our umbrella of Cityscape. So I'm a project under Cityscape, and they'll be funded. There are 3 other soups in the Detroit area. There's a Ferndale soup. There's a soup in North Corktown. There's a Hamtramck soup. There was a Dearborn soup. Techtown is starting a soup towards entrepreneurial ideas. And I have ideas to start 2 other ones in smaller neighborhoods that would meet every 2 to 3 months rather than monthly. Because we found that like monthly, it's a lot of work if people aren't like dedicated to it. And it's finding people to make the food and make the salad and reach out like to their community for project proposals. So if you can do that every 2 or 3 months in a smaller setting, That's just as powerful. So I think it's a really easy model to do small scale projects. You have a thought?
I was going to ask, what's the turnaround time? Like, do you let the people who are getting the donations know that night, or do you
Yeah. Oh yeah, by the time that like it's 9:15, 9:30, we declare a winner and we call it good.
so everybody knows, like,
Yeah. Or if you leave early, like I'll post it on Facebook or our website. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The one young gal that started the empowerment plan,
Mhm.
where she took the coats
Mhm.
and turned those into sleeping bags. What was her name again?
Veronica Scott. And her email is, or her website is theempowermentplan. It's either .com or .org.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, she's amazing. She's absolutely incredible. Of a human.
Is anyone considering submitting a project idea? Maybe. Friends.
I always encourage people to come and experience the dinner, and you'll kind of see how what happens is each project gets 2 to 3 minutes, literally, and I cut it off. I have no shame, like, you're done talking. You have 3 minutes to explain your project. Because after 4 projects, like, no one wants to sit there. Our heads are in 1,000 different places. And that's why I've limited to 4 per month. And then you get 3 to 4 questions from the audience. And so that really takes up a bulk of the time, is people asking questions. Because when you come in, you'll see the project proposals and you get a chance to read them. And it's a chance to kind of, when it's kind of awkward or nervous and you've never been there before and you're like, what are we doing? I'm sitting on the floor. Why is this happening? Why am I here? Kind of moments, at least you have something to do and read and engage with. And then we eat, and then at that point, it's such an easy way to say, oh, what project do you think should win, and start a conversation. I've been swayed by other people. Like, I really thought this project would win. And let me tell you, probably of the 2 years we've done it, maybe 5 of the projects that I really wanted to win have won. So, you know, what I think isn't always, it's certainly not best. I don't have the commodity on what projects work. Yeah.
So if a person doesn't win, can they resubmit their project?
Yep. Yep. And even if you have one, you can resubmit. There's no rules. Yeah.
Any heated debates?
I don't know about that per se, like, because when you run a project, you end up like having a lot of like, oh, hi, nice to meet you kind of conversations where I don't really get to sit at the tables and engage. But I'm sure that there have been. I think if you're willing to take the risk to ask those questions and ask tough questions, I think there's been some presenters who've been shocked by the questions that have been asked from the diners. Like, oh, I've never thought of it that way, or I didn't think about that, or I didn't realize that this was happening, which is good. Or projects that I really thought were going to win and were unable to really engage or answer the questions that were being asked. We're like, well, I guess it's not their time yet. So if you have a project that you're almost at the brink and you're thinking about it, I would say that's the best. That's my advice that I give to other people. Yeah.
Are there any requirements as to, like, it's Detroit suit?
Mm-hmm.
Do the projects have to be used
In
in Detroit?
Yes, that's about the only limitation.
It's a more general project that could be used across the nation and it could also be implemented there. Would that be up?
I guess like the questions that are on the form are like, how would this impact the Detroit community? And if it would impact Detroit and then a broader audience, I couldn't imagine that would be a problem.
And is there a timeline that you have to be able to implement this within?
Usually we ask people to come back every 2 months, 2 months after their project is completed, to share. So whether it be like if you're in the planning phase or you're working towards something, we funded a project on the east side of Detroit, and she's like, every time she wanted a fence around a garden, and every time she'd try to like go up and like put something in, like a fire happened, like a major disaster like just struck, or like a ton of the produce is stolen, things that like, were happening. She's like, we're almost there. We're getting there. We're working towards it. So city's not easy. Yeah.
You said something about maybe starting like a community garden. Have
Mm-hmm.
you worked with any other community gardens around Detroit?
We had in the beginning gotten a lot of the greens from different people who had their own gardens or had a community garden. And then we kind of got away from that for a little bit. And then I was listening to, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Grace Lee Boggs, but she runs a center in Detroit, and she was on an NPR show called On Being, and they were talking a lot about urban gardens and urban farming and just how they felt reconnected to the land and reconnected, how neighborhood kids come and tend to it. I have a friend who works at Greening of Detroit and some earthworks, and I know like Southwest has a lot of urban, like most of the backyards back there have gardens in it. And so I just thought that would be, I just was really shocked that we hadn't done that yet, that we weren't getting a group of people who support Detroit Soup to have its own garden. So that's something I'm really excited to start implementing. And the building that we're gonna be moving into, I've been told that they're talking about doing a rooftop garden as well. So there's a lot of potential and possibilities of using the land. Mm-hmm.
How did you come about starting this organization? Did you contact the people in Chicago and say, I'd like to start?
Our friend Kate, who originally brought the idea to the table, witnessed it and participated with it in Chicago with a group called Incubate. They no longer run their own soup. I think Chicago, there's a couple other people who took the idea and ran with it. And I think they've toyed around with different ideas of philanthropy as well. But I was talking with somebody the other day, like Detroit's becoming like the mecca of like small financing and small ways of doing things. Like when we started doing soup, there was us and then Loveland Technologies, which were selling land by the inch. So you could own a parcel of the land. And since then, I think we counted that there's 9 or 10 different initiatives that are happening on a small scale. So from, $500 to $50,000 towards your idea or project. So we did contact, I think just experiencing it, knowing that it could work in Detroit, seeing the space, and like, when Kate saw the space and knew that there was a lot of potential to it, just started like cleaning it up and inviting people in and getting doors and people donating stuff. And
how did you guys come about the space?
it's Jessica Hernandez's father's space. So having her being a part of it really helped. But I know that there's, like even as I've been exploring new spaces, like people have been more than generous. Like, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So, and there's more and more people investing in the city than there were 2 years ago, which really helps in getting more spaces open to people to use. Awesome.
If there are any more questions, and let's give Amy a round of applause.
Oh, thank you.